hope, this session will be really useful for all of us. So let's take it away, Kate.
Hello there, I'm Kate Thorpe, and this is the free webinar entitled Looking After Yourself During Lockdown. As I record this, it's early April 2020. The UK has been in lockdown for about 2 weeks, and it's a tough time for pretty much the entire planet. And I was thinking, what can I do to do my bit? I'm not a key worker, I'm not part of the NHS, and I'm not one of those that is currently keeping the world going. And may I just say and start out by saying thank you. Thank you so much to those of you who are doing that incredible work, because you are just amazing, and along with the rest of the country, we love you and we thank you. But it occurred to me to think, well, what can I do? And so having heard and spoken with a lot of people throughout this time since the pandemic first started, I wanted to put together a resource for you that can help you get through this period of lockdown, get through this pandemic, with your emotional well-being as intact as possible, because these are unprecedented, tough times, and none of us in our lifetimes have really faced this before. So I'm hopeful that you will be able to take away something from the content of the webinar that will help you do things a little bit differently, will help you get through this time, and help you also help your loved ones, those people around you that you care about, because it isn't just us, of course it's all of us, and we're all in this together. So that's the intention, and yeah, let's kick off. Before I start properly, let me introduce myself, because you might not know me, you might not have come across me before. My name is Kate Thorpe. I'm a therapist. I'm based in Glossop in Derbyshire, which is in the northwest of England. And I'm a therapist and therapeutic coach. I specialise in stress and anxiety related issues, and I do that for two reasons. One, I have a lifelong history of anxiety myself, so I know what it's like, and it's bloody difficult. I also know what it's like to be able to recover and manage it, and that is an ongoing process. But when you have cracked that, as it were, when you've learnt the tools and you've learnt how to work with anxiety and stress and well-being, work with it in your life on a day-to-day basis, then trust me, it is life-changing when you do that. And so I come from a place where I have undergone that transformation, if you will, and I want to share that with the people that I work with therapeutically. The other reason I focus on stress and anxiety is because that regardless of what's going on in your life, stress makes it worse, anxiety makes it worse. So if we can do something to lift the levels of stress and anxiety, then whatever else is going on will get a little bit better too. So it's a really great thing to focus on for a much wider impact. I work with people face-to-face and online in collaborative therapies or in groups, and practice a lot of different talking therapies. And I've also worked with organisations as well. I do have a 20-year corporate background, which I won't bore you with now, but I'm a former solicitor, so I have an understanding of the corporate as well, which is why I can bring some resource to bear for organisations now. But that's enough about me. Hopefully that puts what I'm going to say to you into some context, and let's dive in. So before we dig into the present, it's helpful to understand where we were just a few short weeks ago. Back in February, it seems such a long time ago now, in February 2020, the UK was aware of the pandemic that was spreading, but it hadn't really had that much impact on us. So let's look at where we were from a mental health perspective at that time. Because it's easy to look back and think actually everything was all rosy, and we're not really seeing the truth. So where were we towards the end of February? Well, we were in a situation where, according to the Health and Safety Executive and their Wellbeing survey, over 600,000 workers, that's employed people, were already were already suffering, I beg your pardon, from work-related stress. And that's work-related stress. That's not stress caused by breakups of relationships or caring for children or other dependent relatives. That's work-related stress on its own. And you can see the stats on the slide. I'm not going to repeat all of those, but you can see the bottom one is that 12.8 million working days were lost because of this stress, anxiety and depression in that year. And to give that some context, because I realized 12.8 million days, what does it mean? If one person were to take one for the team, and that one person were to take all of that absence, they would be absent for 35,000 years plus an extra lifetime for good measure. That is a lot of time. That's how much absence there already was. That's how much stress and anxiety and mental ill health was already impacting us. And I actually suspect the situation is a little bit more dire than that. I don't want to be the voice of doom and gloom, but again, it helps us for context. This was a survey of junior lawyers taken in 2019, and in that survey, 48% of the respondents suffered from mental ill health in the month prior to filling out the survey, but less than 1 in 5 were reporting it. Less than 1 in 5 people reporting this to their employers. So you can see that actually when something like a pandemic comes along, this is the backdrop against which it is coming. And there are lots of reasons why this situation has got to this stage. The first one is our culture here in the UK, and quite often in other countries as well. We have a culture where we grit our teeth and we carry on. We grin and bear it, you know, that stiff upper lip approach. Just keep calm, carry on, make another cup of tea, it'll all be fine. And there are times when that approach is useful, but equally there are times when that approach means that we start denying our own feelings. We don't talk about them. We don't admit to feeling stressed or anxious or that our well-being is harmed in any way, because we're just expected to get on with it. And this is something that on a long-term basis is quite dangerous, and it's something in our culture that is changing slowly but not quickly enough. And of course, in desperate times, we revert back to what we know, to what we're taught. Coupled with that, in our education system, you know, we teach our children how to do quadratic equations and algebra and all sorts of things. But we're not teaching our children how to look after their mental health, how to look after their well-being, how to spot the signs that actually something isn't quite right. And again, that's a problem. And in fact, nowhere in our education system is this covered. Not in our higher education, not in universities, not in on-the-job training or apprenticeships. We're never taught this stuff. And thirdly, in addition to our culture and our education system, we also have created a set of beliefs about stress and mental health. And if I were in a room full of people and I throw this question out, if you suffer from stress or you let stress affect you, it says something about you. What does it say? 9 times out of 10, these are the 4 most common answers that I get. There is a lot of judgment with stress or anxiety and mental ill health. And that judgment, believe me, is pretty unfair, because this belief is not true. It really isn't true. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you if you are experiencing symptoms of stress or mental ill health, or your emotional well-being is taking a pounding. What it does mean is that there are needs that are not being met, but it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you or that you're incapable of doing your job or anything like that. So we have this backdrop. We have a culture and an education system and a belief system of judgment of others and self-judgment as well, that actually together combine a situation where there is a lot of stress and we're not talking about it as much as we could. We're not seeking the help that might be available. Now fast forward, and guess what? It's today. And all of a sudden, our world has changed. We have a pandemic. COVID-19 has landed, and by goodness me, it is playing havoc, isn't it? With our world, with our lifestyles, with our very lives. The world changed, and it seemed to change slowly for us at first, but it was one change after another. So we started off with social distancing and keeping 2 meters apart. The next thing, the vulnerable and people over 70 were told to self-isolate for 12 weeks. Then we're all working from home. Those of us that can work from home, many of us are now unable to work because we've been furloughed. Our jobs don't allow us to work from home, all sorts of reasons. And so this is a massive change, and of course it's a worry. And then schools went out, and all the kids are suddenly at home, and our identities are challenged. You know, are we parents? Are we school teachers? Are we childminders? What the heck is going on? And all of this really puts us through the ringer. And these changes happened so quickly, and they then led to lockdown, where we are limited in when we can go out, and we are encouraged to stay at home. And all of this is for good reason. So now we're in a situation where we are either alone at home and potentially very, very isolated, or we might be stuck with family. And while some of us might say, isn't that wonderful to spend time with family? The reality is, as you will know, that actually being stuck in a household, living on top of each other, is one of the most difficult things that we can ever do. And it's one of the things that creates more and more stress and anxiety, because it builds up in it builds up in the household. And it could be very difficult to cope with. And all of that adds to this unconscious level of stress and anxiety that's happening at the moment. And now there's the real danger of actually contracting the COVID-19 disease. If you are suffering with this, or you know someone who is, or heaven forbid if you've lost someone, I am so sorry. This is a horrible, horrible disease. I too know people who have suffered, and it's not pleasant. But the fact is that this disease doesn't discriminate. It isn't just the elderly or those with a pre-existing condition that can catch this. This is infectious and can infect any of us. And how we respond is pretty much a lottery. Some of us will get sick and not know about it. Some of us will get sick and potentially that's life-threatening. So again, a backdrop of our personal existence. This is an existential threat to our safety, to our very survival. We're now settling in for the long haul with this lockdown. We don't know how long it's going to continue, but the chances are it's going to be a while. All of this, when we put it into this context, has impact, massive impact on each and every one of us, whether we like it or not. It isn't just the world that has changed, we are changing as well. And as I said before, we are subject to shock after shock, change after change, challenge after challenge, and this is traumatic. It is traumatic for us collectively, and it is traumatic for us individually in very different ways. Questions I hear often: what comes next? What's the next thing they're going to land us with? What else can go wrong? Questions: how will I survive? And again, this is a very existential crisis. How will I survive might mean, how am I going to pay for groceries? How am I going to pay the rent or the mortgage if I can't work? It might be, how will I survive if I catch this disease? How will I protect my children and my family and my loved ones? What's the new normal? Who knows what the new normal is, because the new normal seems to be changing. It's settled a little bit now with lockdown, but that potential for change, again, change that we can't control, is always there. And so asking ourselves how long this particular phase is going to last and who am I in this new normal, these are big questions. And then how should I feel? So many of us are experiencing conflicting feelings. We each respond differently with different emotions. And some of us are not feeling anything at all. Some of us are numbing out. And all of this, I want to reassure you, is perfectly natural. It really is natural, bearing in mind the unnatural aspects of what is going on at the moment. And so all this leads us to the point of where we are now. We have to do something different if we're going to survive. We have to get through this differently. And so we need a new set of thinking. We need a new set of rules, and we need a new way of being. And that's what I really want to focus on. What's important is not to normalize what's going on, because this is not normal. This is not a normal life. We talk about the new normal, yes, but this is not normal life. So how can we start to change our thinking? What can we do to help ourselves and those that we love? Well, the first thing is to start paying attention to ourselves in ways that we might not have done previously. I'm going to share some things that you can look out for. Behavioral things, the ways that you're thinking and feelings, things that are red flags. These are warning signs to be on the lookout for, whether in yourself or those around you, because these things are indicators that that all is not as it should be, and we need to pay attention to that. I'm going to start first of all with feelings in the body. What you're looking for, what you're wanting to notice here is change. What is changing? Is your appetite changing? Are you craving more food, or have you lost your appetite recently? That's an indication that something's going on. The brain-body connection is so strong, and very often we receive messages from our brain that tell us how we're doing, but it's through the body, and we might often ignore those. It's so important not to ignore the messages that our physical body gives to us, because that brain-body connection, those messages are actually from the brain. So when we notice something different physically, that's something to pay attention to. And so appetite changes. If you're off your food, then what's going on there? If you're finding that actually you're craving food, that might be a sign of boredom, it might be a sign of stress, whatever. It's a change, and it's worth looking at. If you're sleeping poorly, whereas before you used to sleep well, or if you're finding you're sleeping all of the time now and you're really tired, again, it's an indication something needs attention. Your digestive system, again, is a really strong indicator of how you are yourself. So again, pay attention to your body. How are you feeling? Are you feeling that everything is flowing as it should? Is it flowing too much, or is it not flowing enough? Physical sensitivity might be an increase in sensitivity to things like light or sound or taste or touch. Again, notice changes. The next thing is your thinking and your brain function. So what changes are you noticing here? Are you encountering forgetfulness and memory loss? Are you finding it difficult to pay attention to things? Brain fog. Yeah, when the mind gets overwhelmed, when the body is overwhelmed by a lot of this unconscious fear and anxiety, it's very difficult for us to think straight. Lots of biological reasons why, and I won't bore you with those, but they can really create problems for us in trying to do what we need to do. It makes us have difficulty making decisions, or just aspects of daily functioning, and certainly a lot of overthinking that goes on, especially in the middle of the night. Overthinking everything that we've said or done and that other people have said and done, worrying about things, focusing on that. How has your thinking changed, and what are you noticing about it? The next thing to look out for is, of course, your emotions, your feelings. You might notice that your emotional sensitivity is greater now. Perhaps you're feeling more emotions, you're losing some emotional control, or you're finding actually that emotions are harder to cope with and you're becoming more intolerant to them because it's actually too much. If you're feeling irritable, overwhelmed, feeling edgy and not able to relax, sometimes we can feel a bit disconnected from reality. The first time I went to the supermarket and saw all the shelves stripped bare during the early weeks of the pandemic, I experienced a sense of real disconnection. It was almost as if I was somebody else walking down the aisle, saying to myself, my God, what's going on here? And that in the short term can be a useful thing because it's a protective mechanism that protects us from the trauma that might be experienced at that time, or the traumatic feelings that we're having, like fear or anxiety. But long term, if you're feeling that sense of disconnection and unreality, or you're feeling a bit numbed out, like really not feeling much at all, or you're feeling quite apathetic, then those are indicators that there is a need that's not being met, and we need to pay attention to it. I'm not here to interpret what all of those things might mean, but these are really good things to look out for because they will give you a warning red flag. We need to do something. And what I am going to share with you are some things that you can do to help yourself to reduce the impact of all of that stuff. So, what to do. What action can we take? Well, one of the very first things that we can do is to check in with ourselves. What is it that we're checking in with? Well, on a very basic level, check in with yourself and ask yourself the question, how am I doing? How am I feeling today? What's going on? What am I experiencing? And if that is all you do, then that is a really great way of just pausing, taking a step back, and appreciating what you're experiencing and what you're going through. And if you find that something is amiss, actually, I'm not feeling great. Actually, I'm feeling all sorts of different things. Then it's an indication, okay, well, let's do something about that. But we can take checking in further. If you've seen any of my presentations or webinars before, then you'll know that I talk about the stress scale quite a lot. It doesn't matter if you call it the Wellbeing scale, the stress scale, the anxiety, or any other scale. It's simply a measure on a scale of 0 to 10. What is the intensity of what you're experiencing in this moment? Maybe something's happened. Maybe you're about to have a family row. Maybe you're about to lose your patience with the latest bit of tech that isn't working as you want it to. Whatever it is, on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being absolutely nothing, everything's fine, pina coladas on the beach, and 10 being I'm about to go nuclear, this is off the scale. Where are you on that scale? Now, this is subjective, so it only matters what you think. It doesn't matter what somebody else's number is. This is your number, this is your scale, because this is your well-being that you're measuring. Scale of 0 to 10, where are you? And again, that takes that check-in process. It gives you something to hang your hat on to go, okay, so yesterday I was at a 4, today I'm at a 7. Okay, so just checking in using this basis can be really useful and can give you some information on which to work with. But then we can take it even further, and we can add a much greater richness and experience to this whole checking in process by using a journal. A journal is, it can be a notebook, ideally a fresh one. You might already journal on a regular basis, in which case fine, keep doing it. But if you're not used to this, then I'm not suggesting that you start writing down everything that happens like a dear diary. Journaling is to help you process your feelings, emotions and thoughts, and can be part of this checking in process if you want it to be. Here's a way, it's a suggestion as to how you might do it. So maybe at the end of the day, you take your notebook and you reflect on your day and think back and imagine, okay, when did I check in and when did I notice that whatever it was I was experiencing was at a high level? Think back to that moment. Okay, write down that number in your journal. There are 5 things to write down, and this is the first one. Write down the number of the intensity of whatever it was you were experiencing. The next thing to write down is, what were you doing? What was happening? What was triggering that feeling, that experience that you were having? What was going on? That gives it context. The third thing to write down is, what thoughts are going through your mind or were going through your mind at that time? Now, it's okay to use all the 4-letter words if you want. It doesn't have to be full sentences. It can be odd words. It does not need to be grammatically correct. This isn't for general consumption. This is for you. What words, what thoughts were going through your mind? And if you can identify any of them or all of them, write them all down. The next thing to write down is what physical sensations are you experiencing? So we've already talked about the mind-body connection. When we experience something, generally we will feel it emotionally in our heads and physically. So what physical sensation were you experiencing? Whether it's a tingle, whether it's in your tummy, whether it's a change in temperature, could be anything. But what did you notice physically in your body at that moment? And the 5th thing to write down is, what emotions were you experiencing? Often we experience more than one emotion at a time. Write down all of them and name them all. Because when we can identify the emotions, we can work with them. Okay? So in your journaling practice, if you can do this, and only take 5 minutes, don't spend forever on this unless you want to. But this is a way of helping you process whatever experience it is that you're writing about. And it's a different brain process than thinking about it, different brain process than talking about it, because you're writing about it physically. This can help you also to spot patterns. So if you do this every day, you might notice repetitions. You might notice the same sorts of things coming up time and again. And it can give you a bank of information on which you can look back and say, okay, so I see there's a thing there. I probably need to avoid that, or I need to change how I deal with that. And it's also a way of connecting with yourself, of reconnecting with yourself when sometimes we become disconnected, in identifying what it is that we're thinking, feeling and experiencing, so that you can then process it. And by process it, I mean we release some of it safely. This is also something you can teach to your kids or to your family. It may be something to help them start processing their thoughts and feelings as well, on a level that's right for them. So that's journaling. So far we've covered basic checking in, we've covered the Wellbeing scale and journaling. The next thing I want to talk to you about is communication. And there can be an assumption, well, everyone's feeling the same thing as I am, so I'm not going to talk about my feelings. That's patently not true. We are all feeling different things at the same time. There will be a collective feeling, of course, and all of the impact of everything that's happening, but how you are feeling in any given moment is not necessarily going to be the same as the next person. The more we can talk about this with each other calmly, the more we can understand and help to process our emotions, and help those that we love process theirs too. So communication has never been as important. However, the way we communicate has changed. It's had to. We can't communicate in the same way that we did. We can't stand close to people. We can't hug. We can't touch. Don't know about you, I'm a hugger. I love giving hugs, and I'm feeling a bit bereft because I can't hug people. I can't show my feelings in that way, and so this takes some getting used to. We have to find other ways of communicating. Well, if you're watching this webinar, then very clearly technology is a wonderful thing, and we can begin to use this more and more. And through that different kind of communication, we can stay connected, because staying connected with our fellow human beings, again, absolutely vital, particularly now when we're isolated, when we can't see our loved ones. That connection, that human connection, really important. And it's ironic, because normally I would say to you in Wellbeing, unplug, stop using the technology quite so much. But right now, ironically, it's any port in a storm. So use the technology to stay connected. This, however, is my word of warning. Okay? Yes, stay connected. Yes, stay in communication. All of that is good for us. But if you are working from home and your work involves computers, you're working remotely, and now all of your communication involves computers as well, the danger is that this happens and your brain ends up constantly plugged in. Added to that, entertainment media like video games or TV, films, Netflix, watching the news, we are constantly plugged in. And when the brain is constantly plugged in, it's stimulated. That creates the potential for increased stress and anxiety, and ultimately that can lead to overwhelm. So I want to share with you some ways that you can stay connected but healthy. Okay, so we do need to have our connections, we do need to use technology, but let's do it in a healthy way, and here's how you can do that. The first thing, as I said before, notice the overwhelm. If you're feeling overwhelmed, check in. That's why the check-in process is so important. Get some unplugged downtime. Really simple, just literally unplug. If you're going out for a walk with the dog, don't put your headphones in. Read a book. If you're stuck at home and you can't go out, read a book. Do something that doesn't involve technology. Turn off notifications. I turned off my LinkedIn and Facebook notifications last year, and it was freedom, because if you've noticed, when the thing on your phone buzzes, then the temptation is to say, I'll have a little look, and it keeps drawing you back to your phone or drawing you back to your tablet. And when you turn those notifications off, it means you choose when you interact with social media. You decide when you want to look at your emails. That gives you much greater power and control over what you do, and also enables you to disconnect from technology and then reduce that level of stimulation, which is so important for us feeling calm. You can also choose who you connect with and how. If you choose that you don't want to talk about COVID-19, then make it a virus-free conversation. If you interact with people who drain your energy, who after spending time with them, whether digitally or otherwise, you feel exhausted, maybe they suck the joy out of everything, you have a choice as to whether you interact with those kinds of people, whether to indulge them now or not. That is a very empowering thing to do, because I ask you this question right now: do you have the spare energy and bandwidth to allow someone else to drain it? Or do you have better things to do with your energy and your vitality? You have the choice and you have that power. I would also say limit your news consumption. I've certainly given into the temptation to overwatch the news, but again, it can be overwhelming, and when you take a step back, keep informed but limit the consumption. Again, it helps everything calm down a bit. So those are some ways to stay connected but healthy. One of the biggest challenges that I am hearing about are people who are stuck at home, living on top of each other with their family and loved ones, and they need a time out and they can't get one because they're all at home. Where do you go? There's only so many times you can walk the dog. Well, here are some suggestions for what you do, and it does depend on the resources that you have, and sometimes it means thinking a bit laterally, but bear with me. So a timeout room is a wonderful thing if you have the space. If you have a room in your home, it might be an attic, it might be a spare bedroom, it might be a garage, doesn't matter. A room that's not used very much, could that be designated a timeout room, where basically anybody who needs time out away from everyone else in the family can go in there and do their own thing? We don't all have the luxury of the extra space of being able to do that. So if that's the case, maybe you can use your bedroom as a timeout room and just hang a notice on the door saying time out. If you share your bedroom with others, then can you do it on a rota? So think laterally about the space in your home. You do not have to be with everybody 24/7 if you can find a little bit of space to carve out for yourself where you can literally just have that alone time. Really important. Boundaries, so hugely important in living with other people at the best of times, and I'm not saying this is the best of times, probably it's the opposite. So more important than ever to set the boundaries and agree those with all the people in the household, and have that respect for each other's needs. And if there is a member of the household who isn't being respectful of those needs, then that's a conversation that needs to be had. Again, it kind of reiterates the need for good communication, and having that communication in a healthy and calm way, and setting the boundaries and the guidelines and almost the house rules, if you like, that can prevent problems, which is easier than having to deal with them when tempers get frayed and arguments start. One way of unplugging from everybody else, it's not unplugging of course because I'm suggesting that you use an app, but one way of getting some peace and quiet while in the house is to put your headphones in, maybe listen to music, but a meditation app is a great way of helping your brain just calm down. If you're not practiced at meditation, or you're finding it difficult to meditate because of the noise and commotion in your home, then use an app, because they are very, very helpful. They have different meditations for different levels, different lengths of time. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. Calm is one of the apps that I hear good things about. Headspace is another. So check those out and see if they might be able to help you. But it's a great way of giving your brain a complete break. If you have a garden, use it as much as you can. You know, planting stuff, gardening, or just sitting there can be wonderful, but we're not all that fortunate. If you live in a block of flats, or you're in an apartment, you might have a balcony, and if you do, go out. Go and have a look outside. Actually see what is going on. Sorry, that's my dog in the background, keep moving around, bless him. And if you don't have a balcony, maybe you have a window. If you have a window, go and look out of it. If you're finding it difficult to get out and about, the more you can look out of your home, looking outward it's a shift in perspective. Not only that, you're exposing yourself to daylight. You might see green hills and nice things in the distance. So make use of those things. It helps us to stop looking inward for that brief time. If you enjoy gardening, do more of it. If you enjoy music, do more of that. Obviously within the confines of the boundaries that you have agreed with the other members of your household. If you enjoy crafts or art, this is a perfect time to get some time out and do something that nurtures you, something that you enjoy. And please don't feel guilty about doing it. It's an absolute necessity. And finally, decluttering is a great way of getting some time out, because nobody really wants to help you sort out that closet or that wardrobe or that under the stairs cubbyhole. But actually decluttering is a really therapeutic thing to do, and it gives you a bit of space as well. So there are many other ways that you can get time outs at home, but maybe this has given you some ideas as to what you could do, how you could change your home, and importantly, get some boundaries in place with the right communication and respect, so that you can make this time, even if you are living on top of each other, a bit more tolerable. The aim of this, remember, is survival, to get through to the end with our mental health and our emotional well-being as intact as possible. Now, at the moment, we are able to go outside for exercise. If you are able to find a place in nature, do it. You will know the difference between the feelings you get when you stand in the middle of a city, even if it's deserted, and the feelings when you stand in the middle of the country, or in a wood, or in a field. It doesn't matter. The energy is very different from man-made places to natural places, and as human beings we respond really, really well to the energy of nature. So use the exercise allowance that you have and get outside, and if it's possible, go somewhere that has nature. I'm going to suggest you, as I said before, don't have your headphones in. If you can make your interactions with nature more mindful, then you will get so much more from your experience. So by mindful, for those of you who don't know what I mean, it means literally using all of your physical senses to absorb the environment that you're in. So using your eyes to look at all the different colors and the different things that you can see. And if you see something interesting, go and look at it, inspect it more closely. Notice those color changes, notice all of that. What sounds can you hear? Maybe you can hear the sounds of your feet crunching on a path, or the grass swishing as you're walking through it. Can you hear the wind? Can you hear the sounds of nature? What can you feel? Is there a breeze, or is the air still? Is it cold? Is it warm? What do you sense? And using all of your senses of sight, sound, taste, touch, everything, then you can make your walk much more mindful. And what you are really doing is, of course, grounding yourself, because you are connecting with what is around you. You're connecting to the ground and to the earth. You're connecting with nature around you. And in doing that, you're helping your brain recognize actually you're safe. When your brain feels safe, then we feel calm. Now, talking about safety, one of the things that makes us feel safe as human beings is being in control. Because when we control things, we have certainty. When we have certainty, we know what's going to happen. Nothing's going to catch us unawares. So we like control. And at the moment, of course, there is so much that we cannot control. And that's one of the reasons why this situation can be so difficult for us, because we don't really have control over it. So what do we do about that? Well, sometimes we have to accept that, yeah, all right, there are things that we can't control, but there are also things that we can control. And that's the key. It's working on understanding what is within my remit, what can I control. Here's a list of just some of the things that you might be able to control. You choose whether you self-care. You choose whether you check in. You choose whether you social distance or wash your hands. You choose the topics of conversation. You choose your boundaries. You choose how you interact with people and what energy you expend. You choose to notice and accept the feelings that you have and maybe release them in some way. You choose to let go of this stuff that actually isn't serving us right now. There is a whole load of things that we can control, and when we focus on what we can control, it's so much better for our mental health and our mindset. So I want to ask you and encourage you to, again, if you use a journal or a notepad, it doesn't matter, write down all the things that are within your power and control. When you focus on what you can control, you create that feeling of safety and security and therefore calm. Now, I'm hearing a lot of coaches and adverts suggesting during this time you can write that book, you can learn an instrument, you can sort out your sock drawer, you can entertain your children 24/7, you can get fit, you can do this, that and the other. Well, I don't know about you, but sometimes the thought of doing any of that stuff scares the pants off me. It really does. It's like, oh my gosh, all this pressure, this weight of expectation that if I have time on my hands, I must fill it doing something wonderful, doing something that benefits mankind. You know what? Forget it. All that is required of you during this time is to survive, is to get through with your sanity as intact as possible and to keep those around you as safe as possible. That is all that is required. If you're feeling the pressure to make the most of this time, please think again, is this actually right for you? If you are moved to want to write a book or sort out your sock drawer, then by all means do it, but please do not feel the pressure or there is an expectation on you not to waste this time. No time is wasted because it's all about moving from one moment to the next, and we have to get to that next moment with as much sanity and well-being as we possibly can. So don't allow the weight of expectation to crush you. All you really have to do is just get through in whatever way works for you. So one of the ways that we can do that very practically is, of course, to have routine. Now, a lot of people are likening this time to that period between Christmas and New Year, the crimbo limbo, when it's okay to drink wine at 10 o'clock and wear your pajamas all day. Well, that's fantastic at Christmas, but right now we do not know how long this is going to go on for, and the temptation to let the routine go out the window is very great, and it can be fun, and I'm not dissing it, but long term, as human beings, we thrive on structure, we thrive on certainty, and when that goes out the window, it creates more stress and anxiety. So if you've noticed that your daily routine is slipping, try and bring a new routine that's going to work for this current new normal. It's the same for your children as well. So some of the things you might think about reintroducing if they have slipped are wake and sleep times, getting regular sleep, waking at the same time, getting up and going to bed at the same time. Some of these, by the way, are really basic, but it's easy to let them go. It's easy to forget about them. So it's just a little reminder. Have set meal times. If you're used to having set meal times before this happened, then have them again. If you are used to dressing every day before this happened, do it again. If you've noticed that, pajama days are becoming the new normal, maybe think about changing that back, because it does help with the mindset, particularly if you are working from home. But even if you're not, these basic simple things help bring about our routine. When we have routine, we have structure and certainty. Exercise, of course, if you exercised before, then keep doing that as much as you can. Admittedly, that may need to change. If you didn't exercise before, but you're climbing the walls, then go out for that walk, because that is allowed in the rules at the time that this recording is made. Define your work and play times and make sure that you take your breaks as well. So the temptation when you're not commuting to work or you're not having to travel is maybe to fill that time with extra work, and that's admirable but not always necessary, and certainly not always healthy. Why not use that time in a way that can nurture yourself, in indulging a hobby or an interest that you like to have, instead of having to do more work? have that playtime in your schedule, and of course breaks and time out as well. And boundaries. Again, you'll notice some themes coming through here, all about communication and boundaries. These are so important right now. So think about your daily routine and how can you bring some structure back into that. Incidentally, it's not always necessary to pre-plan every moment, and certainly not for children. In fact, we could find that our creativity really kicks into overdrive when we are bored. So it's okay to be a bit bored from time to time. So the next thing to talk about very briefly is eating well and healthily. Again, some things that I've heard recently, people say, oh, I'm going to do that diet now. And that diet might actually be a marked difference in eating patterns from before COVID-19 to now. And what I would suggest is that when you change your eating patterns, then your brain registers that potentially as a threat, particularly if you are depriving yourself of certain food groups that you're used to. So that can create more stress and anxiety. I would advise against making any significant changes to your eating habits, unless of course it's to eat more fruit and vegetables, eat all the colours of the rainbow and all of that usual dietary advice. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not going to advise you on that. But one thing I would say is that eating a healthy, balanced diet is one of the surest ways towards getting good mental health. Also, cooking and having the time to cook, maybe you do have a bit more time on your hands, can be really therapeutic. Working with food is great. It can also be a family activity. That might be something you want to include in the boundaries and house rules. So have a think about maybe getting the recipe books out and trying something new if that's not what you're used to, and get the people in your household involved in that. Try different things. So therapeutic to work with food. And of course you can eat the fruits of your labours. I do want to talk a little bit about sleep. I know we've mentioned it before, but alongside, the proper nutrition, safety and structure, getting good sleep is so important for our mental health. You know what it feels like to be rested and refreshed. Maybe you don't feel that you get enough of that, but I'd like to share with you some secrets. They're not really secrets, trust me. Some things that you can do to help yourself get better sleep, particularly if you've noticed a change in your sleep patterns since lockdown. Routine. We've already talked about it, so I'm not going to repeat this except to say ease off the electronic devices before bed. The blue light from backlit screens such as TVs or tablets or phones interferes with the brain's understanding of day and night, and basically it will make your brain think it's daytime when really we want to be winding down for sleep. So do something that doesn't involve a screen. Maybe a mental or a physical relaxation exercise as well before bed. Certainly stop work at least an hour before bed. Do your exercise, but do it during the day. Try not to do it last thing at night. It creates all the wrong hormones for rest. Try and get natural daylight, whether that means actually going outside or even just looking out your window. But do get some natural daylight. It helps with, again, the brain's understanding of day and night, when it's time to rest and when it's time to be awake. If you find yourself lying awake at night, whether you're trying to get to sleep or you've woken up in the night with the weight of the world and your mind is going 19 to the dozen, the temptation can be to lie in bed and toss and turn, and that's not a healthy thing to do. What I'm going to suggest is that you actually get up and out of bed and go into a different room. In that room, put on a soft light. Write whatever it is that's going on in your mind down on a pad, and that can help you sort out your thoughts. It can also help you if you are inspired in the middle of the night that actually this could be a really great idea or things to remember for tomorrow. Once that's done, maybe sit quietly, maybe meditate. You might want to pursue a calming activity. Maybe you enjoy crafts or sewing or drawing or reading. Something that is calming to you. After a while, you may well notice that you start to feel drowsy again, and if that's the case, that's the time to pack up what you're doing, turn the lights off and go back to bed, back into the bedroom. The key here is to avoid tossing and turning while you are in your bedroom, while you are in your bed, because when we have an association between the brain and the bedroom that says this is where we go to rest, this is where we go to sleep, then that's a very healthy thing, and it makes calming down and getting into sleep mode much easier. But if you are used to doing things in the bedroom that are not conducive to sleep, like lying awake and worrying, or watching TV, or using your laptop or other technology in your bedroom, then the association is that actually this is a place to work, or this is a place to be entertained, or a place to be stimulated. And that's not healthy for good sleep. So this is one way of helping yourself to break those associations. If you're lying awake and you're struggling to sleep, get up, go into another room, do something calming, write whatever's in your head down on a pad, and then come back when you're feeling tired and try again. And you can repeat that as many times as you like. Speaking of the bedroom, then it's important to make that bedroom as conducive to rest as you can, remembering the purpose there is to sleep and to be calm. So the obvious things apply. If you are east facing room, then maybe put some blackout curtains, particularly now it's getting so light early in the mornings. Make sure it's as quiet as it can be, have the temperature set, all that kind of stuff. I know this is basic, but it's so important to get restful sleep. Remember, the purpose of your bedroom is to rest. And some things to avoid. I've got nothing against a nightcap or a glass of wine of an evening, but if you are struggling to sleep, it's one of the worst things that you can do, as is having a heavy meal before bedtime and taking extra tea or coffee, or other kind of caffeine. And of course, we've already mentioned about backlit devices. Try and avoid those as much as possible. Ultimately, all of the stuff that we've talked about in this webinar today, one change leads to another, and that has a ripple effect not only on your well-being, but on the well-being of those people around you. All of the things that I've talked about can be put in place not just for you, but for everybody else as well. All of the things I've asked you to notice, the guidelines and the boundaries and the communication, this goes for everyone. And so when you change for the better and you find yourself coping better, then that will have an impact on everyone around you and improve everyone's lives. So this is really worth doing. There are some great resources that I'd love to share with you. This first one, if you're thinking about decluttering, recommended by an excellent therapist friend of mine. It's a Facebook page, and she will help you declutter. This is a great blog chatter pack where basically it's a complete list of so many different resources that are available free, things like museum tours, learning opportunities, spiritual things, meditation things, language things, loads of different stuff there. I suggest you check it out and have a look if you are stuck for things to do. So many resources available through the media channels about help with kids and learning and education. And of course, exercise at home. I think it's Joe White, who's now a sudden internet sensation. There are, of course, other exercise programs out there, and jumping around your living room like a mad thing might not be for you. There's plenty of yoga online, there's plenty of Pilates. Do something that works for you. A wonderful colleague of mine is doing a program teaching children to create their own websites. That's the week-long program. If you're interested, let me know and I'll put you in touch. But the important thing is that there are so many resources available. Do have a look. Many of them are low cost or no cost, and can't beat that in this day and age. I just want to warn you, there is a shameless plug coming now. Coming soon is my new self-help DIY program called Sleep Well for Life. This is a tool or a program that is designed for you if you don't want to work with a therapist, but you do have trouble sleeping. It's a lot of information and education, it's practical advice, and it's experiential psychological tools as well, that all together create a recipe, and if you follow the recipe you will notice an improvement in your sleep, and that's why it's called Sleep Well for Life. It's something that I'm creating at the moment. I'm hoping it's going to be available at the end of April 2020 or thereabouts. If you are interested in that, please get in touch and I'll let you know when it's available. The aim is that it's going to be very affordable for everyone. Plug is over. Couple of final words and we're there. Well done for sticking with me throughout this time. If you've ever been on an aeroplane, you've had the safety briefing, they tell you, don't they, to put your own oxygen mask on first, and that advice has never been more important than now. take care of yourself. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you cannot then take care of others as well. If your own resources are depleted, you cannot give to those who need you, who depend on you and who rely on you and who love you. So please take some of the advice in this webinar if it applies to you. Do some self-care, do something that works for you. Communicate, nurture yourself, and keep your own oxygen mask on at all times. Because if you take care of yourself, that will help you take care of others. And it's that ripple effect in practice. Finally, I'd say if you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to connect with me. These are my details. I'm on LinkedIn if you want to connect with me that way. My Facebook page is Kate Thorpe 123, or you just want to put me an email. The best email is kate@katethorpe.com. Please feel free to ask any questions that you like. I'm always available to give a bit of help and guidance. I hope that this has been of use to you. And all that's left for me really to say is take care, stay healthy, and do whatever you need to do to get through this time. You're doing amazing. Take good care.